Okay, there's meeting is now streaming. Okay, I guess I'm good to go. Uh, Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Yard. I'm so glad that you can join us. This is going to be a very, very, very interesting evening for all of us. I promise you that, because we have a couple of amazing, amazing guests. And my co-hosts are always amazing, so I think it'll be just doubly good. My name is Richard Bronson, and I am the founder and CEO of 70 Million Jobs, which is an employment platform that exists for folks with criminal records. And if you're listening and you got a record, or you know somebody who does, who needs help with jobs, send them there and we'll try to help. And also Commissary Club. Commissary Club, the Yard is part of Commissary Club. Commissary Club is the first social network for folks with criminal records. We started Commissary Club. We were solely focused on employment with 70 million jobs. And it took us a while to figure things out, I admit. We are a venture capital funded company. We went through Y Combinator, which, as some of you may know, is like the preeminent early stage investor and accelerator program. Took us a while to figure things out, but we did eventually, and we were successful in helping thousands of people get jobs. So we're very proud of that. When the coronavirus hit, however, the virus had other plans for us, because like virtually overnight, all of our people were let go at the warehouses they were working at, and the manufacturing facilities and the meat packing plants and all that stuff. Overnight, we went from, things doing well to going to zero, basically. And, for a moment, we all thought, all right, is this God telling us to pack it in? But I have an amazing team, and nobody, ever considered that seriously. We always wanted to do a social network. We wanted to bring people together and connect them for the first time. So that's what Commissary Club is all about. So my name is Richard Bronson, and I am joined by two teammates. One is Seth Sundberg. Seth is an incredible guy who himself did time. Seth used to play in the NBA and is very tall, and got in trouble, and came out of prison a different person. And we're also joined by my good friend Divine. Divine is a well-known rap artist, and he's a well-known entrepreneur, and he's always got a lot going on. And he, most importantly, works with us and helps us enormously in, the work we're doing. So what is the Yard? It's, I was in prison too. I'm sorry. I did time, Divine did time, Seth did time, as well as the two guests that I'll be introducing in a second. The Yard, when you're in prison, very often you're cooped up in a, living on top of people, literally. And, where I was, the smell of canned mackerel was always in the air. And it was just awful and disgusting. And, once a day, they'd basically let you out. And they would let you out to play some hoops, or to just walk around, or just to hang out with your friends in the yard. And you might be sitting at a picnic table, or there are bleachers that you might be sitting on, wherever. There's always that one spot that you and your group, your crew, would go to. And when you're there, you have 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever, and you just talk, whatever comes to your mind. There's no agenda. And sometimes you're talking about important things, heavy things. Maybe you heard something from home, your wife is leaving you. Maybe it's totally stupid things. You saw something on TV that you want to share. You might be laughing 1 minute, you might be crying the next. You may be sitting with friends. There may be people walking around who are not such friends. So it's a very sort of social, kind of intense sort of thing, but at the same time, it's a chance to get some fresh air and relax. So the world doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, the world doesn't need yet another podcast with interviews. I mean, I do one of them. I don't think we need even that one. But what we wanted to do is create an environment that would sort of simulate the way it was when we were down, when we were incarcerated, and we would just be hanging out with our group, talking about whatever. And no subject is off limits. And, that's the only ground rule. And that we have some fun too, because believe it or not, even in prison, there were times that you laugh. I want to tell you who we have with us. They are both great, heroic people and good friends. Seth Ferranti has an amazing story. In his early 20s, Seth was on a mission to turn on college kids with LSD. That was his business. And like me, I used to take acid, and like him, I followed around the Grateful Dead around the country. So we have a lot in common. But eventually the feds caught up with him, and he was given a 25-year sentence. Rather than go away to prison, Seth had other thoughts. He faked his own suicide, and then he took it on a lam. And that landed him on the US Marshals 15 most wanted list. Ultimately, of course, they found him, and ultimately he spent 21 years in prison. But like many people in prison, he used his time very wisely. He got his bachelor's degree, he got his master's degree while he was in prison, and he began writing for a variety of publications, and he wrote a couple of books. Since his release, he has been a very, very busy writer and a film producer as well. A very smart, creative, interesting guy. Seth, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. The other guest has it's been an interesting couple of days for him, I think it's fair to say. Craig Cesal was in the tractor trailer leasing business. And one of his clients, it turns out, was a very large dealer of marijuana. This client of his was caught with, as I understand it, something like 1,500 pounds of pot. And Craig got sucked into the whole case. Craig was given, believe it or not, a lifetime sentence. He had no criminal record at all. This is his first dealing with the law. He received a lifetime sentence. He went away to prison. He had served almost 20 years, and then the coronavirus hit, and they let him out temporarily, as they have, lots of other inmates. He knew full well that the authorities could call him at any time, telling him to return to prison, essentially for the rest of his life. But a couple of nights ago, something weird happened. The phone rang where he was staying, and who was it? It was Ivanka Trump calling, which had to be a surreal moment under any set of circumstances. But Ivanka was calling from the White House. Craig, Ivanka told him,
what do you want, Ivanka?
You've been pardoned by President Trump. Craig, 2 nights ago, received a pardon, and Craig is done with his life sentence.
Amazing.
So if there's ever a fucking reason to celebrate us all together, this has got to be it. So Craig, first things first, congratulations, man. How do you feel?
I feel fantastic. I feel fantastic, as you can well imagine. And one thing I can recount is most of us know as prisoners, you go into prison and you're just hell bent that your direct appeal is going to save you. You know, you're
Right.
watching it, you know, this is
They
going to
got
get me
nothing
out
on
of
me. They
this.
got nothing
Good
on
luck.
me. Yeah.
But you're sure that's going to work, and sure enough, that fails. Then you file your post-conviction relief, and you're all gung-ho on that, and sure as shit, you know, that fails. Then a new law comes out. You go running after that, and all your papers in court, and it can't fail, but it sure does.
That's
Well, I got a call on Monday because a bunch of groups have been backing me for clemency. And I got a call Monday morning from actually two different advocacy groups saying that the White House is asking for the best phone number to use to call you. So I figured that sounded good. That was Monday morning.
Oh,
Buy
As you
signal.
can imagine,
Buy signal.
my phone never got an arm's length away from me. And if I was talking on it, if it rang, whoever I was talking to, sorry, gotta go by. Well, lo and behold, I
and I
went
know-
all of Monday. The phone was quiet. The problem is all of Tuesday, they kept saying that clemencies were going to be announced at noon. Nothing happened. And all of a sudden, they just fell out of the news. Nobody's talking about them. The White House is not talking about them. I was bummed, and I went to bed at 10 o'clock. You know, I just, you know, sure as shit, it happened to me again.
Wow.
At 11 o'clock, I got that call from Ivanka Trump. And those words I'll never forget.
What
The
did she say?
president has commuted your sentence.
That was it?
No, she actually made small talk after that. And she was very, very, very nice, you know.
I was thinking that if you're a Trump, particularly over the last few days, about the only good thing about being a Trump was making a call like that to you, because you would be nice to her.
I think she was very, very nice in the call, and it sounded as though she enjoyed giving it. But the one thing that really, that my whole case, and even my release on home confinement as a lifer, which doesn't happen, these things didn't happen because of me. They didn't happen, you know, because of my magic, my fancy petition and all that. This is because of we and us and them. This was completely done by all the advocates, all the people that actually the five of us are trying to be, and many of the others here that are trying to help people coming out of prison, trying to help people in prison, trying to help people with records and all that. I'm the beneficiary of a victory for us being all these people that reached out and helped me. I was on a list from Alice Johnson visited the White House with my name. The Aleph Institute wrote the petition. I was on a list from the Can Do Clemency group out of Malibu, California, out of the Life for Pot group out of Ohio, out of the Human Solution out of Southern California.
Wow.
You know, just out of groups from all over the country. So this was a victory for this entire group.
The movement.
And that's the group that I'm trying to be now. And I know that, you know, the rest of you are.
Craig, how much do you think that you know, this you know, you mentioned lifer pot group, right? That means there's others, right, that you're talking about and all that are going forward. I'm curious to know, like, how much of this do you think is just like the precedent, you know what I mean, to like, okay, now open, you know, anybody who's doing life for pot is just, I mean, to me it seems stupid. I don't know, you know what I mean, like how that even happens when you got something that's legal, but how much of this sets precedence for everybody else, do you think?
It helps. There was 6 of us that had life for pot sentences commuted.
Oh wow, yeah.
And the fun part is I can now officially work for the Last Prisoner Project, where
Right.
my job is helping prisoners re-enter society.
Yep.
Like I got a call about
for
1
you.
o'clock in the morning last night from another one of the lifers that had just gotten home, and he had a message to call me. And this was, you can imagine that phone call was a riot.
Yeah. I bet.
So they had your friends through a Craig's Day for you today? Is that what you told me?
That they did what?
Craig's Day you had
Yes,
thrown for you?
these were friends that came by today that I had known forever, all the way back to grade school, and I'm 61 years old.
Yeah.
And they took me out. They knew of a biker bar that here in Illinois, all the bars and restaurants and all that have to be closed.
Right.
This one was open and it was full of people.
Wow.
I'm glad you
Out
didn't get
front of the-
arrested by going there.
No, I was good because I started my supervised release and it just says, no alcohol to excess. And I wasn't going to drink to excess.
Yeah.
So-
But one of the things, when I walked into the bar, they handed me keys to a Harley motorcycle that was parked out in front.
Whoa. Oh, that's great.
That's got to feel good. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Seth, so you were down for a long time. Did it ever cross your mind that you might have your sentence commuted?
You know, like Craig was talking about, I mean, you always hold out, I mean, I had 25 years when I was 22, and I went through, the appeals, 2255, all that. Even I had applied for, sentence commutation, anything that you could do, I was doing. I was getting letters, making all these big packets. So I was always trying to do it. I just got, I don't know, like, I mean, Craig got a raw deal, I mean, I was running from the police. So when they look at me, they're kind of like, not like I'm some super bad guy, but they're like, oh, this dude's an outlaw,
Yeah.
So I think every time, like, that's why even I was like, I went in right when FAM started, like Families Against Mandatory Minimum. And I was
fam.
I was always writing them and trying to get them to promote my case. But they were like they told me honestly, they were like, man, your case is just not a good look. We're trying to get sympathy, whatever.
Mostly because of the going on the lam.
Yeah, and the LSD. I mean, LSD is seen in a different light, now, because of the marijuana legalization movement.
Yeah.
And weed and psychedelics kind of go together. But
Yeah.
back
Right.
then, I mean, they thought weed was this bad. They thought LSD was like way worse.
But yeah, like chemical thing, right?
Yeah, I don't know nothing about LSD at all.
You have a friend who does?
I think there's somebody on the phone on the call right now that knows a little bit about it, don't you, Richard? Did you ever have
I do. I'm tripping right now, actually.
current state?
So that like kind of makes you guys both went away for non-violent crimes that were drug related. There's and you went to some serious prisons with some serious people there. There's a hierarchy that exists in prison. How are you guys looked upon by the general population?
All right, Seth.
I mean, I was in a long time. I mean, I played sports, I started writing books.
Initially, Seth,
Initially, I mean, I was just like a, little scared white dude. I was like, maybe like 165, 170 pounds, 170 pounds. I mean, one thing that I can say helped me, I mean, I was athletic, so I played sports. I would go out and play, basketball, football, run, whatever. But yeah, I was basically like a scared white kid. And look, when I went in 93. And, when I went in, it was like 75, 80% black, because that was like the,
I went in
that was like the
93.
height of the, they were locking up all the crack, from all the crack era. And
So I went in.
yeah, and for me, like I grew up in the suburbs, I was a military brat. It was just like culture shock. I mean, but I learned a lot, but just going in, is basically like just being thrown. And like I didn't start in the penitentiaries, I was mediums, but they called the mediums, gladiators back then. So you had to fight.
Yeah.
But I was lucky, man, because in any kind of alpha male type environment, like if you're like athletic or good at sports, I mean, people kind of like look up to that. So, I mean, I was very lucky, but usually a lot of times I was the only white boy out there playing.
Playing what? Softball, basketball? What'd you play?
Well, more white dudes would play softball, but basketball, I mean, there wasn't very many white dudes playing basketball. Or the football, the flag football that was really like tackle football.
Got serious.
Yeah, exactly. Flag football my ass.
They called it flag football, but
Yeah, of course they did.
I think I got a couple concussions.
Yeah, carrying bodies is the
Of course you
flag.
did.
Did you play basketball in prison, Seth?
Yeah, no, that's one thing we haven't talked about and I just forgot about it until Seth just brought it up. But like the basketball in prison is something else, boy. I tell you what.
Seth, just
man.
to set the stage here, Seth played in the NBA on the. You're laughing.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because he said how you play basketball in prison.
Man, it was serious.
Seth played with a young Kobe Bryant on the LA Lakers. So going away to prison was a bit of a kind of a come down, I would think, from life in the NBA, right, Seth?
I like to say, first of all, Kobe played with me, but you know, I
Okay,
mean, you
fair
can say
enough.
whatever you want, but you know, like whatever. Like I
Hey,
was
correct that,
in LA
Seth, correct that.
for a micro minute, but no, yeah, it was definitely different. I mean, street ball is different than organized basketball, anyways, right? And
Straight up.
if this is the yard, and I'm being fully transparent, I've never been good at street ball. Like I'm a grab the rebound, throw it up,
You're a technical player.
run, but I grew up in San Francisco, so I'm playing with all these, Snake Jones, Hook Mitchell, like all these all these great guys, and it was like, all right, let's just go, and and that's really, I played my role, and that's what got me kind of moving on from college to the pros, and I knew what that was. But when getting to prison, it's like it's street ball and I mean, just
it's a whole different game,
and all this stuff all meshed together, right?
It's a whole different game.
Man, it was like, okay, but it was fun. I mean, it was great competition. It was just fun to be back in it. My knees weren't the same when I was in prison as they were in the league and all that, but it was still like get after it. And there's some talented guys. Did you guys see that KD did a movie about San Quentin basketball? Did anybody see that? You might know that I think it's called.
I heard about it. I didn't watch it though, but I heard about it.
Cue ball. I think it's called cue ball, right?
So, Craig, so when you got to prison, you were showing up, everybody in prison, everybody knows everybody's business, basically. You show up and you got a life sentence, right?
Absolutely.
What did they make of you?
I had an advantage because, as with Seth, if you go in, everybody's checking your paperwork. We went back in the days where you couldn't leave. I was in the USPs. I started out at USP Atlanta. I told you I smarted off to the warden who threatened me and all that. And you heard about getting put on the first thing, smoking. I was only there 2 weeks, and I was on a bus to USP Big Sandy amongst the very first inmates there.
These are therapy, boy.
Wow.
Sandy's but with you couldn't leave the unit except to eat until you had your PSI to put out. But they looked at
Explain what that means, Craig.
The PSI is your pre-sentence report, and it lists everything about your case, everything you did, but it primarily tells them what's in your criminal background. Is there any sex offenses? Did you snitch on people? Did you try to get a sentence reduction?
And gang stuff.
Yes. Just all kinds of different things that would tell you, that would basically define you in your PSI. So that was your ticket to, okay, this guy's okay to walk the compound. And, well, of course, they looked at mine, and I'm a marijuana offender. There's no priors in there. There's nothing in there, and there's a life sentence. And they just can't figure out what they're missing.
Is that going through your mind as well?
No, they're thinking these papers are phony because no way this actually happened. Like, that's bullshit.
They did, and they had great people to check. But where I developed an advantage is when they opened the law library, I was the law library clerk. And I was actually already experienced that legal stuff and all that. So I just started helping a whole lot of guys with legal work. And it kind of endeared me to all the different groups and all that. So really, I didn't have to fight my way into anything like anybody else. I made myself valuable where other people fought for me.
That was smart.
Nice move, man. Nice chess move. I like that.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about what you were going to do when you got out? That's all we talked about. I spent my every day scheming with other criminals about the crimes we were going to commit when we got out. Did you talk about like dealing drugs when you got out? Was that part of your plan, do you think? Seth, were you going to do that?
No, I got hit 25 years for my first offense. So, I kind of, I would say I learned my lesson.
For real.
I started going, other avenues like the education route, and that's the biggest thing I was trying to figure out. Like, I got all this time to do, what can I do, to let myself, like when I hit the ground, so I can hit the ground running, I was like, what can I do? Cause I knew I was going to get out. It's not like I got life. So I was just doing everything possible, and trying to make all the different connections I could, to, get things ready for when I got out. And that's how I started writing, because I was like, what career can you have from prison? I mean, they got a lot of like trade stuff you can learn, be a plumber, all that stuff. But I'm like, I'm not, I use my mind. I'm not like a, hands-on type of dude, I don't fix stuff, but that's what I spent my whole time, man. I was just like, man, what can I do, to get out? And really, I knew a lot of dudes, because I used to associate, and I was in a long time. So I knew a lot of dudes that still kind of have that criminal mentality, and they would talk about all that stuff. But I tried to shy away from, guys like that, on the compound, even though some dudes, they might be my dude or whatever, but, I wouldn't like actually hang out with them. I just, walk by, what's up, because I wasn't really trying to, go that route. I wanted to be a writer. So that was kind of like,
You could do that.
Yeah.
Craig, honestly, did you think you were getting out ever when you went away?
Well, like I say, to be honest, when I first went in, I thought, no court of appeals would allow a life for first time offender on a marijuana case stand. So really, I was working towards, trying to get out, but I really didn't look to getting out. I looked to, because unlike Seth, I didn't have a day, so really my efforts went into what it took to get out, and then what it took to make changes, within the Bureau of Prisons, make changes, and all the other legal stuff. So I led a lot of fights. I helped a lot of other guys. I challenged the administration all the time. Like one little story I'll give you is yesterday, I had to drive down to the halfway house in Chicago so they could cut the GPS off of my ankle. Well, I walked back into the lockdown part of the halfway house where they did that, and two guys came up to me that I knew from the federal system. One from 10 years ago, we were at Greenville together. One that I just left at USP Terre Haute. But they both came up to me and asking me if I would help write legal stuff for them. And they're in the halfway house. They knew my situation.
I had a guy that I became friendly with in prison. He used to be an assistant U.S. attorney in Miami. And then he went into private practice, and he had some Colombian drug lords as clients, and he got in trouble with them, and they sent him to prison.
That never hurts.
Well, sorry?
It never hurts having Colombian drug lords as clients.
Well, it can hurt. It could hurt. they can hurt your neck badly. And he got in trouble, but he went away to prison, and he was like the camp designated, criminal attorney. But every prison has jailhouse attorneys. They're called. Every one of them.
Craig, so is that something that's like interesting to you now? I mean, you got years of legal experience, a lot more than a lot of people have, that pass the bar, right? Like, I mean, is that something that, you aspire to be now that you're, out free, rebuilding everything? I know it's in you for sure.
Absolutely. As you know, yesterday, the Bureau of Prisons was stopping me from working for the Last Prisoner Project. Right. So as of yesterday, I'm a full-time employee.
Excuse me for interrupting. I just wanted. Can I just explain for the people who don't know? The Last Prisoner Project is a nonprofit organization that exists to help folks just like Seth and Craig who are in for drug charges, particularly pot, I believe. And they do really great work, and they're really good people. So, so you're working with them now, right, Craig? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, my title is Reentry Coordinator. So
Nice.
people that are coming out of prison after serving marijuana sentences, we have a bunch of money that from a bunch of donors. I can help them with that. I can help them in resources where they live and all that. Like Michael Thompson is getting out next week after getting clemency up in Michigan. He doesn't have teeth, so I'm arranging to get, teeth paid for him and things like that,
That's great.
the things that the government doesn't do, And I can tell you, like I say, with
they'll pull them, they won't give them back to you.
It's true.
Yo, so Craig, real quick, being that your sentence is now commuted, does that, so you're that's everything wiped clean, your record wiped clean, everything, you're starting fresh, anew?
No, I was not pardoned. That would be a pardon.
Oh,
But
okay.
what I had is I had a sentence of life imprisonment, and believe it or not, because a drug sentence has to be followed by a term of supervised release, I had a sentence of actually the words in court for it are a term of natural life, followed by 5 years of supervised release. So President Trump commuted my life sentence to time served as of Tuesday.
Okay.
And so now, as of today, I started my 5 years of supervised release.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, but I arranged, there's a way that guys that know what they're doing, you can terminate it at 1 year. My last 3 stellies in a row did it. A lot of other people I prepared have done it. And I've told the last day, all the other lifers that got clemency, I'm teaching them how to do it.
But outside of that, you have 5 years supervised release, correct?
Pardon?
Outside of that tactic, you have 5 years supervised release that you're on now.
But like I say, I arranged with my probation officer today that my plan is to leave in 1 year, and let's start working towards that right now. You know?
whether you say it's good or not.
All right. So I want to, first of all, if anybody in our, I don't know what we call them, anyone who's
Audience?
On the
in
yard.
our audience, if anyone on our audience has any questions or comments or thoughts, please access the chat mechanism at the bottom of the screen, and I'll try to get to your questions. If you have something that you feel like you'd like to share that we'd all benefit from hearing, please make note of that. And Adrienne, who's on our team, she is screening all this stuff, and she's the gatekeeper, so be nice to her, please. And in a little bit we'll let some people in. It's interesting, somebody, Anthony Jackson, who's joined us, he mentioned some of the best lawyers are in prison, which
debatable.
I think it's true that there are a lot of lawyers who should be in prison. I think that's something we could all agree upon.
Absolutely.
So I want to hear, I know both of you guys are out, but the yard is in. So let me ask you a question. As two nonviolent drug dealers, essentially, are involved in the drug trade, or not involved directly, Craig, or whatever, however you think of yourself, but you weren't leading the life, and now you're in prison. What was the hardest thing, Seth, for you to adjust to? What freaked you out most at first?
I remember when I first got out, just going into the stores and all the selection, because I was only used to going to the commissary. You just put in a slip, and they throw in whatever they got, mixture stuff, whatever. They're like, just here, take it. So it's like you put in a wish list and you get whatever they give you. And you can't, say, I don't want this.
No, I want to know, when you went to prison, what was the hardest thing to adjust to?
Oh, when I went to prison? Oh,
yeah.
Man, I would just say, basically, I'd say it took me 2 years to kind of, just feel confident, I could make a move. The first 2 years, I was real cautious. I didn't want to jump out there. So, even voice your opinion, because sometimes people might do something and you think it's wrong, but if it's a certain type of people, you can't tell them it's wrong, because then they're going to bash your head in. So, it took me a couple of years to kind of just become comfortable in my skin and who I was, and, where I was at in the prison hierarchy.
Did part of that have to do with people understanding who you were and respecting you and accepting you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you definitely, I've talked about it, a lot. I think I talked about it on the last time I was on the yard, but a lot of times, man, it's, you put on that mask, man. You put on a mask, and because you can't show any weakness, and it's always worse with your own people. Will be the ones coming at you the most, and you got to put on that mask. And
whoa, what does that mean? Your own people?
Yeah. Usually it's like white people prey on white people, and basically, in prison.
Same race.
People, yeah, people prey. The worst people, they prey on their own race.
Hmm.
you know?
And was any of those games played on you? I mean, did you have to deal with that directly?
Oh no, no, I had to fight. You had to fight. Yeah. I mean, if it came up, you know, somebody, you know, you got to draw that line. If somebody steps over that line, you got to do what you got to do.
So what I'm asking, that was not your life prior to going to prison, right? That was not your life dealing acid for sure.
Mm.
People on acid are not fighting with each other. So all of a sudden, they finally track you down. They toss your ass into prison. How quickly did you have to come to terms with this? And was that really difficult, or you know, what was that whole process like?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, you got to come to that. I mean, because look, when you're in the street, you can have money, you can have this, you can have that. You can go hide here, hide here. In prison, especially the feds, it's a fishbowl, man. You can't hide anywhere. You know, like they were talking about your PSI and your jacket. Your jacket's going to follow you everywhere. So, I mean,
Explain what your jacket is to people who don't know.
You know, like if you get a jacket as you know, a punk, a snitch, a sex offender, you know, sometimes it might not even be true. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they put all types of jackets, especially when you get in the lower security prisons. They put all types of jackets on people, you know, just like trying to play chess and make moves and stuff. But I'm saying my first 2 years, like they had weights when I first went in the Fed. So I probably put on 20, 25 pounds. You know, you had to put that body armor on, man. You know, because, you know, unless you're like a certain type of dude that is just, you know, willing to get like a knife and, you know, go get somebody. And, you know, I've never, you know, been that type of dude. You know, some dudes, you know, take to that level, but, you know, happily, I've never been in that situation where I've had to do that. But
So do you believe that prison then changed you in that respect? Is that the kind of dude you are now?
no, I'm not that type of dude, but I feel like, I mean, if need be, I can defend myself and my family. So
To an extent that probably you wouldn't have gone there back in the prior to your incarceration.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely, you know, I mean, it changes you going there. You know, that you got to deal with all the, you know, harsh environment in there and all the, I mean, it's degrading, you know, they try to dehumanize you, you know, and plus that's just like the system, but then you have to put up with all the other prisoners too. So,
Yeah. What was the hardest thing for you, Craig, to adjust to when you first got there?
Prisoners, just acclimating to prisoners, because especially in the USPs where I was, most of the prisoners had been in prison, you know, for multiple terms.
The USP is a federal penitentiary. It's
Correct.
a
It's for
serious,
high
serious
custody
place.
inmates.
Yeah.
People with over 30 years on their sentence, which was my situation. And most of them, because their points, their assessment of how much criminal history they have, how much violence they've committed, things of those natures, would put them in a high custody institution, which has about double the staff of like a medium or a low. And it's just a dangerous place because a lot of these people have really violent backgrounds and even mental illnesses that follow those violent tendencies. But there I went into, you know, my background out on the street is you had groups of friends, you had family, you had, you know, kind of support around you. You had places where you were comfortable because of the family group, the group of friends, you know, things of that nature. In the prison, you're all by yourself. And most of those people that I mean, of course you gain friends in prison, or, you know, people you hang out with and all that. But it's not the same as your family. It's not all that loyalty. It's, you know, you're really not all that compatible, you know, in many cases. So that was
Wow.
the hard thing to get used to, is the whole structure of yourself was different. You didn't have
What do you mean
place,
the whole structure of yourself was different? What does that mean?
because now you had to be completely self-reliant, you know. You went there by yourself, and you had to make your own bones, you know. You had to make your own legacy. You had to prove who you were and who you weren't in some situations. And you know and you're by yourself doing it. You can't call up somebody else to vouch for you, you know.
Divine, you got I think 7-year sentence when you first went away to
Yeah,
prison.
84 months. Yeah, 7 years.
Right. And you walked in there, you might have even known people in there, right? I would imagine. What was your, you know, attitude when you walked in there? What were you trying to, let people know who you were, not to mess with you, or were you conscious of that?
I was in a state detention facility for a year before I actually got sentenced and sent to the feds. For the most part, like, I'm not a big dude. I'm not like the average dude, 6 feet, you know what I mean? Maybe 180 pounds, whatever it may be. I was a small kid, but and I was like only 19 years old. But I was never nobody like you could fuck with. I was never that type of dude where you could just do what you want, say what you want. It was never my style. So even though I went in on my P's and Q's, you know what I'm saying? Basically meaning, you on point, you know what's going on around you. I'm real sharp. So being in that environment was more like, okay, I at the time that I got arrested or I got charged under the crack cocaine law, I was the first person from my town sentenced under that law to go to the feds, and one of the first in the state of Rhode Island to be charged with that law, the crack cocaine law, which was 100-to-1 ratio.
Congratulations, D.
Powder to crack, right? So when I went in, I was dealing with a lot of white collar criminals. It hadn't flooded with the crack cocaine, urban, inner city individuals that were selling, low-level drug dealers, if you would. I was considered high level because I was selling keys of cocaine. They used to call me the Kilo Kid, because I would go to New York. New York was like 2.5 hours south of me from Rhode Island, and everybody used to think I was Spanish. So because I thought I was Spanish and I looked Spanish, I was able to get the high level connects, because most Black people can't get those high level connects like that with Spanish people because they don't trust them in the streets. So it goes to Colombians, the Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Blacks. That's how it moves. They used to think I was Dominican. So the Colombians would rock with me. You know what I mean? And so I would go to New York City, Colombians, Dominicans, whatever, and get what I needed and do my thing. But when I went in, I went straight to a medium. I was in Ashland, Kentucky, went straight to a medium, and that was my first time in federal prison, being that far away from home. And I was I just really like stayed to myself and kind of like, was who I was. And just, I just observed what was going on and just played my part and did what I had to do. But I never had any problems, man, throughout my entire time. Really? I became like a model inmate and worked my way down from the medium to the lows to the camp.
D, what was the difference from state to the feds? You did a year first in state, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was only in the detention center, but I know detention is always hard. You know how that go. Yeah. So when I went to the feds, I saw the feds was like, I'm like, yo, this is like kind of sweet. Right. Like kind of smooth, you know what I'm saying? I'm in there with white collar criminals, dudes from Wall Street, you know what I mean?
Guys like me.
Taking pension funds and all that. I was like, all right, this is cool.
When I first got to the yard, I was like, I asked my bunkies, like, all right, so when can you go outside, right? When can you actually get to? When I got to the big boy yard, right?
Yeah.
And they look at me crazy, like, fuck you talking about? Like, you go outside at 4 in the morning when
it was laid back, man. And I had heard stories about the feds was like, it was easy time. Yeah. You always hear that it's easy time. They got fed spots with pools in them, and all that.
It's true.
But, it was cool.
Federal prisons are generally more professionally run. They're cleaner.
There you go.
Safer.
Less people.
Financed, Richard, financed.
They have, exactly. They have professional people running it. Seth, I got to ask though, because I just can't imagine. Seth is 7 feet 1 inch. And and I spend a lot of time with Seth, and wherever we go, Seth attracts attention. He's a good-looking, very tall guy, and it's just who he is. When you showed up at prison, Seth, you had to raise a bunch of eyebrows, right?
Yeah. It's funny though. So going in, everybody's like, "Oh man, what's your background?" Checking papers and checking the story out, making sure you're cooler now, whatever, right? And then after about 2 weeks, nobody gives a shit because we see the same people all the time, right? Nobody's moving. Maybe you get a new person in every once in a while, like, "Oh fuck, you're tall," like no big deal. And so I forgot after a while that how tall I was compared to everybody else, because it's just like nobody asks anymore. And then I got released, and I was burnt out, right? I was just like trying to figure out my way in the world as a new fish, a new tadpole in a big pond. And and I'm walking down the street, you know, on Market Street in San Francisco, and everybody's going like, "Hey man, how tall are you? Hey man, how tall are you? Hey man, how tall are you?" And I'm just like bugging out. I'm like, I am not in the space to like really get into this with you right now.
Yeah, just to sign autographs.
Yeah.
All right, so we've had a few comments and questions, and one of our one person in our audience shared something that I want to kind of share with you all. I asked Divine when he was going to prison that I said, you probably know some people there. Now, Divine and I are friends and we know each other, and I know his story and we work together, and I know where he was and what he was doing and everything else. But the question I asked, do you know people there? You know, which is not what I asked Craig or Seth. You know, I could appreciate, you know, that someone might consider, you know, that white because he's the black guy selling crack. He must know people in prison, but, you know, nobody else does. And I appreciate that. I think that's a really, I'm thank you for, and you know who you are, who said that. I know Divine very well. I know his story. I know his background. I know his experiences like he knows mine. And I know, in fact, if he knew people in prison and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, listen, you know, my experience in prison as a white guy, a white collar criminal, was different than yours selling crack. And the truth be told, I should have gotten 20 times the sentence that you did, you know, based upon what I did. So I know that there's so much injustice to go around. So if I offended anybody, and certainly if I offended you, D, my friend, I apologize.
No, I'm not offended. I know where you're coming from. It's a good place. But
All
like,
right.
no, but like, seriously, let's look at the dynamics of race in America. We know what it is.
Right.
We know what what I would say about stereotypes. Stereotypes always have some truth to them, a lot of truth to them. Stereotypes are not just stereotypes. We just make something up. Stereotypes are given because there's a pattern, right? There's a pattern of certain things that happen. So it's easy to have stereotypes based on those patterns, and people perceive things like that, and that's what it is. And unfortunately, unfortunately, whatever it is, I went during a time when the crack cocaine law wasn't executed upon low-level drug dealers. So I went in a time before that happened. So when I went in, there wasn't a lot of people that was selling crack. It was all about, I was around a lot of white collar criminals, which to my benefit, I was like, oh, teach me some things. I learned my first business plan and how to write business plans from a guy who's from Wall Street, an older gentleman. I thought he's probably gonna die in prison based on his crime and how old he was. But I would like I would engage lawyers, doctors, and people like that.
Right.
I wouldn't just be like, oh, I'm hanging with the black guys. That was never my mindset anyway. So
yeah, I had a lot of that. There were where I was in prison. There were a bunch. Actually, Jared Kushner's father I was friendly with in prison.
right.
And there was a congressman and businessmen and, you know, successful people. And in general, lots of the guys there would gravitate towards the white collar criminals because you were talking of mentorship.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
You know, and they were looking for that. I think we were in Clubhouse talking about mentorship.
Right, exactly.
And you were saying how you really sought that out, and a lot of people did that, you know, and they all wanted to connect. I'm sure you guys, you know, Seth and Craig, you connected with people too who wanted to learn about business or whatever.
Right.
And they were smart for doing it.
But Richard, I mean, absolutely, the white experience and the black experience in America are totally different. And if you're poor and black in America, and if you're white and rich in America, two Americas exist for individuals of that. If you commit a crime, same thing. Two types of justice systems exist.
How do you not walk around completely pissed off all the time because of that?
Say it again.
How are you such a positive person knowing that exists?
Because you have to understand the reality of what it is. I mean, you see things are in this world, everything we're dealing with in this world is not just magically, it just magically happens, right? Everything is created by the mind. A thought came before the things that we're dealing with. Everybody's dealing, whether it's white, black, whatever. There's always a thought that precedes it. So that's man doing that. Man has created these things that we're dealing with today. So you have to look at that and be like, okay, these are the dynamics of what it is. This is why this man thinks like that. This is why these group of men think like that, or they enact these type of laws, these type of things. I mean, it's for me, it's like, it's clear cut. You can see exactly what it is. It's more so just having the perception to identify what is what and what it really is and what it really isn't.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're talking about politics right now, right? And there's a
We're talking about life. We're talking about
I don't know about
World.
politics.
I'm talking about prison politics specifically,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
When
yeah.
you go, okay, you're a white dude, you got to hang out with the white guys. You're black dude, you got
Right.
to hang with the black guys. Everybody's sitting at this table and all that shit, right? And I started at the Medium, and it was a lot like that. And I was like, and I vibe with, with good people that I vibe with, I mean, period.
Yeah, me
And,
exactly the same
like,
way.
and it was like, oh man, I got pulled up a couple of times, and I'm like, look, we're gonna have to fight about that thing, because that's not like, I don't get it, for one.
Well,
But
wait.
I'm
So in other
curious.
words, what I think you're saying, because I think I've heard the story, other white guys would come to you and object to the fact that you were hanging out with black
Yeah,
guys. for
like
example.
you
Right.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh,
Exactly.
you guys can't eat together, you can't do whatever, and like, you gotta eat with the white dudes. I'm like, man, I'll eat.
Right,
I'll eat
exactly.
lunch with, whoever I want to eat lunch with, right? Like,
Yeah, I never fell into that. Same thing, Seth. I never fell into none of that bullshit.
yeah. So
Craig.
politics is bad in prison, and Craig was the one that's like most recently there. Like, is it still like that now?
Absolutely. There's the white tables, the black tables in the chow hall.
Exactly. It's always going to be
The,
like that.
Latin King tables. There's the
Right.
the Vice Lords tables and
Right.
all that. It's still divided that way, but depending on where you're at, the racial stuff is toned down a little bit. In that, I remember, especially when I was at the Pen back in 2002, 2003. As a white guy, I couldn't have a black guy in my cell. I couldn't sit at a table in the cell block if it was a black table.
Right.
I mean, this was lines that you just couldn't cross back then.
Yeah.
But of course, I was writing legal papers for everybody.
So you're good, yeah.
So I had to meet with people regardless of their color and regardless of where they were at. So I was lucky to get kind of an exception.
You
But it
got a
was like
pass.
that. Oh, well, he's taking their money, so that's.
But
good
you're a
enough
necessity.
for-
You're a necessity. Exactly. You're a necessity. You're safe. You're in a safe zone.
Hey,
Yeah.
so along those lines, Craig, you were paid somehow for all the work that you would do for people, right? How did they pay you?
I knew you was
to be
going
honest,
there. I knew
in
you
a
was going there.
lot of situations, I made more money by really not charging them, because you look at it, the guy that you don't charge that works in the chow hall, when I come through the serving line, he makes sure I'm good.
Yeah, you're raising the price.
Imagine
How
what
were you
that's
paid though? When you were paid, how were you paid? Is what Richard's
Now, a
asking.
lot of times I would get paid, especially by the people that got money, but most of it was either stamps, a typewriter ribbon, a typewriter wheel,
Oh, God.
the things that I needed.
Books of stamps. Books of stamps was the currency.
What was
Yep.
the currency for you, Seth Ferranti?
Oh, it was cigarettes at first, but then they knocked the cigarettes out, so then it went to stamps.
Right. They stopped. Yeah, they
But
stopped the cigarettes.
it was weird because in the feds, it depended what spot you are. Because, it was like when I was in Manchester, FCI Manchester, medium high, it was like, basically like cigarettes, and then like by the time I got to like early 2000s, like Gilmer, West Virginia, which was a medium, it was more like stamps. And then when I went to the first low, I went to Loretto.
Say it.
Loretto was like mackerels.
Yes.
So
I
it
know
really-
it.
It
That's what it was
That's
for
what I was
me.
waiting for. The
Yeah,
macro.
it depended on where you were at as to, and I know state systems are a lot the same, but historically in prison, I would say, cigarettes, but then when they banned the cigarettes in the feds,
Right. It
it's
became
When
stamps and
I went
macro.
up,
Did you
It
get that
showed
old
me in-
mackerel?
they took me into my housing unit for the first time, and I smell, first there's people just like yelling at each other just sitting talking, but they only can yell. And I'm going, why are they yelling? And that's the way they talk. And then I had to smell. That was the worst smell I've ever smelled. in my life. I never ever experienced that. I go, what the fuck is that smell? And they go, it's canned mackerel. And I go, what the hell is canned mackerel? What is that? Is that a thing? I go, yeah, they eat the canned mackerel, and that's what's the unit of barter. And I go, fucking, what is canned mackerel? And then it was, you know, I would have to give the guy who did my laundry 2 canned mackerel a week. This funny Anthony Jackson, who's listening in, talking about stamps. He goes, I came home with over 1,000 stamps.
Damn.
And he still has them all. Yeah, nobody like writes letters.
Did the
anymore.
forever stamps. UPS forever stamps.
That's great.
Forever stamps.
Somebody else asked
on eBay.
Somebody asked a question of Seth and Craig, and it's kind of like an open-ended question, so I'm not exactly sure where you go with this. What is the one thing that changed relative to your thought process or your own self? Maybe like how you see yourself going through what you've gone through. Do one of you guys want to handle that one?
Yeah,
What's the one thing that's changed about you?
I would just say, I mean, just being in prison for that long, I mean, you learn who you are, you learn what type of man you are, you learn how you're going to deal in certain situations. So just for me, just like that confidence in knowing who I am and what I'm capable of and what I'm not capable of. I mean, because in the joint, when you do a lot of time, you can put in all types of different situations.
What are you not capable of? What did you learn? If you don't mind me asking.
I mean, I don't think, I'm not gonna like, I got to the point, especially like later in my bid, like, where like the white dudes, they would come and they'd be like, oh, this dude's this, or he's this, or we got to go check him, or like, it'd be racial stuff, or like this dude's, sitting with blacks, like they were talking, and they try to get me, to go
try to
do
draw
it.
you in.
Yeah, and at first, like my first 10 years, I would get drawn in, because I want to prove I'm like a go hard white boy, I want to prove that, to my own people in there, so they respect me, and then everybody else respect me. But after like 10 years, man, because I had a lot of friends, so I would just, I want to do stuff like that. I want to get sucked in. I wouldn't go on missions, just because I'm white, I got to go on a fucking
Seth,
mission. You know what I'm saying?
To interject real quick, so you basically were being other than yourself.
Yeah.
When you got drawn in, you was being other than yourself.
Fit in, because I was putting that mask on.
Exactly.
That's
not who you were.
On.
And it's such an unnatural environment.
Right. Exactly.
You're not. What about you, Craig? Is there one thing about you that you've noticed that's changed? Maybe you discovered it when you got out, recently, and you go, holy shit, I didn't realize this has happened to me. Has something happened to you?
Well, you learn, like I spoke earlier, you learn to be a lot more self-reliant. You can ride with the group like Seth, talks about when you first go in. Oh yeah, you want to put in your work. You want to prove that you're really part of this group. You want to make sure this group's going to have your back and all that. And after a while, you realize they're not. That they're just playing you to do their work half of the time. And
exactly,
it's kind of a mess. So what you do is, what I think I've become is more self-reliant, where I can put more effort into different things, instead of the most important thing being the money. Now the most important thing is being successful at something that makes a difference,
Okay.
So Richard,
it's a new perspective,
Richard, can I pose the same question to you? What did you change?
That's a good question. I was afraid someone was going to ask me that.
I wanted to do it.
I mean, as some of you know my background, I worked on Wall Street and I made a lot of money, and I, led a fairly glamorous, exciting life. And, I drove around in Ferraris, this like bald, stupid old guy in Ferraris. I could just imagine how embarrassing, how embarrassed I should have been. But the thing that I am most regretful of, and I'll be honest with you, I wake up every morning with this sort of emptiness in my gut about my past and decisions that I've made. Wow. And even just speaking now, it's upsetting to me. But what I'm most regretful of is not the financial stuff, because I paid everybody back. I paid
Right.
everybody back. Nobody, at the end of the day, no one lost a nickel. I am saddened by and regretful of the disrespect that how I treated people, that I was somehow better, and if they weren't rich, they were somehow worse. And
Wow.
how many times I would say, do you have any idea who I am? Like I was like, who the fuck was I?
A little
You know?
pompous.
Beyond pompous, beyond
Right.
pompous, and beyond even the pomposity that I had any right to believe. Like, who the fuck was I? I was no,
Right.
I was no, whatever. I look upon that, and going, and so this brings me really to the next question I wanted to ask. For me, going away to prison, a lot of it is terrible, a lot of it is stupid, and I didn't go away for 20 or 30 years, and I wasn't facing a lifetime sentence. So I just say that as a caveat. But for me, I got a lot out of the experience. When you're scrubbing toilets for 100 guys in prison, you learn a little bit about humility, hopefully. And that's something I did. And I realized what was, my ego and all this bullshit that
Right.
wasn't really bringing me any happiness. If you have to take drugs to cover up your unhappiness, you're not that happy,
Right.
And does Donald Trump look happy to anybody?
Not at all.
I mean, but he's a wealthy guy. So for me, learning that lesson was the most important thing. So that brings me to my next question that I was going to ask. There's a lot of talk, particularly these days, about the criminal justice system, and we're very much involved with it. All five of us are, or five of us are involved, and many people who are joining us are very involved too. And I think we all agree that the criminal justice system is racist, it's unfair, it's ineffective, it's terrible, it's not rehabilitative, on and on and on. I can speak badly of it. But for you, Seth, for example, was there something good about going away to prison for you? Did you get something out of it?
Oh no, I think I'm the person I am today because of prison. I mean, without that experience, I mean, it's impacted my life, greatly. I mean, I got like from different friends, and just like me and Divine, like we met on a movie set, and just because we have the experience, I can just like immediately bond, and talk to, because other people that've been in prison or did a lot of time in prison, like we talk the same language. So, it's kind of like a bonding. And I would say, I mean, I'm not happy that I had to go to prison for 21 years. I mean, that really sucked, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, I did the best in a bad situation. But without that, I wouldn't be who I am. Who knows who I would be? I don't even know who I would be. And
but who do you think you are? Is there part of you that is for the better? Do you believe?
Yeah, I mean, because I grew up like, kind of middle class, upper middle class. So I was kind of like a little, spoiled kid, thought everything could go my way. And I mean, prison taught me a lot of humility. And then, I mean, when you get that sentence and you just have that anger, like they, did something so unrighteous to me, and that's how I felt. And then you just live with that, and you got to cope with that. And it kind of, I feel like, because I'm a writer, so I feel like kind of like my writing was like forged in that anger, and frustration, at my sentence, because that's why I started writing. I was trying to reach out to the world.
So it gave you a voice, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, because I was so angry. I was like, I was angry for myself. But then the longer I was in prison and met other people and started writing about their stories, I was angry for everything. And, this goes back, what you were just talking about, like, the system and criminal justice reform and stuff like that. Because I used to say all the time, especially when I was in the lows, man, I was like, they could let like half the people out in all the lows and they wouldn't even commit crimes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Craig, did you get something out of your time in prison?
I think I did, in terms of learning people and appreciating people, because as you know, in college, they make you live in a dorm for at least 2 years. So you learn to get along with people because you're all kind of crammed together. You got to share the bathroom. You're all eating at tables with a whole lot of people and all that. So you learn to get along with people all crammed together. But to be honest, that group of people, it has an awful lot of things in common. You know what I mean? The people really aren't that diverse, you know. In prison, it's extremely diverse, and you're crammed together a whole lot closer
So
together.
what did that give you?
That gave me an appreciation of the other people, how to get along with them, and how to appreciate them. How to appreciate the guy from Trinidad that would teach me about their way of life and how they looked at things, and how, you know, that the guy that was from, you know, the tough part of Chicago is compared to the wealthy part of Chicago. You know, the guy that was from, you know, all these other countries, you know, it's just very diverse.
What do you get out of prison, D? Anything good?
Absolutely, absolutely. Prison was nothing but a positive experience for me. And I say that real quick. I want to interject on what, not interject, but just add on to what Seth and Craig were saying. Was that if you notice the answers from someone who's black from poverty in the projects, prison experience is totally different. I didn't have to learn humbleness going to prison, because I was at the bottom of the bottom. You know what I'm saying? The bottom of the bottom. You're already humbled to the very absolute degree of humbleness, because you're fighting for so much to get up. You're fighting for so many things to get up. But when I say prison was nothing but a positive experience for me, I'm always optimistic. I look at the glass as half full, never half empty. So I turned prison for me into a college. The judge actually told me, consider it like going away to college. That's what he told me at my sentencing. I said, okay, yeah, this ain't no like college that I know, going to prison, leaving my 3-year-old son. You know what I mean?
College.
And I cried, and I actually cried tears when I got sentenced, like in prison. My son's wailing, he's crying, and I cried tears when I was sentenced. I had no idea what I was facing, but when I did go, I said, you know what? I kept it in my mind. Turn this into college. Make this like college. And all I did was turn it into a learning opportunity.
So
and
you
so
got
when
that
I,
out
when
of
I
it.
look at when I look at my peer, like someone like Shaka Senghor, who went into prison and became more violent and more, you know, disgruntled and negative, I looked at it like, okay, well, I got to turn this into something positive. So prison to me was never like a downfall. It was more like a challenge for me to rise above and keep doing positive things and get home as fast as I could.
All I can tell you is
Straight up.
I like the way you are now. That's all I can tell you personally.
Thank you, bro.
Seth, I know you've talked about this very often. It's not a popular subject, particularly in the world that we live in, working for change, fighting against an entrenched, very broken system. But I've heard you say that prison was exactly what you needed. Is that true? Seth Sundberg.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think I got perspective out of it. And that's what I hear a lot in everybody's kind of conversations, right? Is like, you get perspective, like, you know, whether it's a different world that somebody's coming from, whether it's a different location, whether it's different age, whether it's different background, ethnicity, industry they worked in, et cetera. You get a different perspective. And really, like in that, I saw a TED Talk once. The guy had something great to say. He said, you know, everybody kind of wants this just kind of even playing field, and like, this is it. But really the dynamics, the highs and the lows, like happiness that we're looking for as human beings is in there. And prison is pretty much the fucking lowest of the low. Like, I think that's, you know, that we can agree with, right? And like, I never want to go through that again, but being, I consider that one of the biggest blessings of my life, you know, to get that perspective. And it costs to get that, right? It costs my daughter, it costs my, you know, my ex-fiance, like my family members, my, you know, loved ones. It costs, you know, it costs money, you know, that there's a price to pay for that we've all paid for sure. But it also is invaluable at the same time, you know? So now that we're here, and, you know, it's that's why I love this yard, man. It's like, this is great.
We can
you know
vent,
what I mean? Like,
we can vent it on the yard. Anything goes.
No, for sure.
Well,
That is great for us. The world needs to know it. Like, it's good.
thanks for sharing that, Seth. I appreciate it.
It's therapeutic.
Which brings me to my next question that I've been sort of dreading bringing up, but I'd be remiss if I didn't. Craig, you had a couple of kids, and you went away to prison, and unfortunately, you lost one of your kids while you were in prison, right?
I did. when I got locked up, my daughter was 14, my son was 8. And after, a whole lot of years, 2017 rolled around, and my son got in some trouble with the law, went to the county jail for a while, got out of county jail right after Christmas 2017, took some medication that they had gave him, drank with it, laid down and died. He was 23 years old. And I can tell you, I did force myself to eat, but I just didn't leave the cell for really about a week. I mean, people tried to console me, and I really very, very thankful for it and all that. But it was just something I just couldn't swallow. And it still hurts me every day I think about it, to think, had I been home, my son wouldn't have had probably that drug experience that put him in jail, that made him take a bunch of those drugs and alcohol and all that. So, I had that guilt to myself to say, me being in prison killed him, and I really struggle with that now. And I can't deny it. And I don't think anybody can deny it. So it really is. And this isn't, I'm not an outlier when we look at this. There's so many people in prison that their family members, they die, they succumb to drug addiction, they all kinds of things happen to the people they leave on the outside because they're not there, to do what they do. I wasn't there to be the father that my son needed. And I do struggle with that still. But we have to realize that. We have to realize, maybe part of that was the ridiculous sentence I had. Maybe part of that, I could blame a lot of things like that. But it still comes down to that the prison sentence, it wasn't just for me, even though the judgment commitment only had my name on it. It really had my whole family on it,
Wow.
Yeah, that guilt, man, is it's a beast for sure. That's something I don't think people talk much about, but and it's easy to say, but forgiveness is the answer, period, done deal. But it's like self-forgiveness, and that's what I think a lot of us have, still need to learn or have learned or got in prison or dealing with it now. But that's that for me personally, that was the hardest thing. And once I got to that point, I was like, okay, now everything I can move forward from here. Once I forgive myself for making the decisions that got me in trouble and affecting and impacting the other people, that's the answers come, you can move forward from that, but it's tough.
And Seth, you and Richard always talk about this, that we feel that our loved ones suffered more.
Absolutely.
From our prison sentences and
Absolutely.
from the crimes that we did and we committed and we went to prison for, and while we were away, they suffered most. I had a 3-year-old son when I went away, right? Richard, your family suffered, and you just spoke to it, Seth, yourself. Your family suffered, so we all can relate to that, absolutely.
No.
And I'm sure Seth Ferranti the same thing.
Okay, well, Craig, thank you for speaking from your heart. As somebody in the audience said, and I just like to echo it. Sorry. She said, hugs is all I can offer to Craig. And I think everybody feels that right now.
Absolutely.
Hugs to you, man.
Condolences, bro. Love.
But like I say, my story isn't that unusual, and that's what we have to realize, about prison, about families, about, it's an unfortunate part of it,
It's beyond, it's today's National Hug Day, bro. And I have one for you. That's
Thank
somebody
you.
else would.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think everybody, if we were all together, we'd have a big hug. That's life behind bars. It's pretty bad. So I'd love to hear, Seth, I know, you were doing writing in prison and you come out, you produce movies, you have books, you go to Amazon, look up Seth Ferranti, he's got all kinds of stuff. And the guy is he's a talent, no doubt about it. What are you looking to do now? What are you looking to take all these experience and turn it into? What's on your agenda?
Well, I did my first documentary, White Boy, which is on Stars. It was about the Richard Bronson Jr. case, which they made a Hollywood movie about it with Matthew McConaughey called White Boy Rick. And we helped to get him out. But I'm working on this other documentary now that, because I live in St. Louis now, that's where my wife is from. And we've been following around this preacher on the streets at night. Like he actually walks the streets in North City in St. Louis, which is like, where all the murders are happening, the drugs. I mean, you just go down there. It's like, it's crazy.
In the mix.
The poverty, the drug addiction, just the abuse. And we followed him. He walks around because it's like, he's like a violence interrupter. So we followed him for 2 years. And like from 2016 to 2018. And now I got that film is almost done. So that's the next thing I got coming out. That should be, I got to go to sales agent, and then we're going to find out. And, hopefully by June or something, I'll have it placed somewhere at a streaming network.
That's great. And we look forward to that. It may be an unfair question to ask you, Craig, about the future now, because the future's been disrupted dramatically. You're hooked up already with the Last Prisoner project, so you're working with them. Is there something else that you want to do, or you have plans to do, or you hope to do?
My number one mission is a lot of advocacy groups, kind of take up different goals in their organizations. You, for instance, took up getting employment for people with felony convictions. Other ones help people during their trials, help people in reentry, help that. My main issue is, and one example I use a lot, is my sentencing guidelines as a first-time offender on a marijuana offense was life imprisonment. But had I instead been convicted of rape, my sentencing guidelines, the middle of it would have been 33 months. There's something wrong with our sentencing laws, and the war on drugs has long been lost.
Right.
And so what I want to do is bring that same common sense argument to Washington, D.C., to our lawmakers, to bring it front and center. I'm an easy example because I can stand in front of people and say, you talk about that, the ranges from 0 to life for the marijuana sentences and all that. But I'm here to prove that people do get life as a first-time marijuana offender. So the problem there is, yes, you can blame the judge. Yes, you can blame the prosecutor, but that law shouldn't exist. No marijuana charge should carry more than a violent crime.
Wait a
we
second.
need to
Wait a
restructure
second.
this.
I live in LA. I walk down the street and there are stores that look like Neiman Marcus. And what do they sell? All they sell is pot.
Right.
And not only do you have the stigma, a record that's going to haunt you forever and make it impossible for you to get a job or carry a firearm or vote or on and on and on, and I know you have a significant other, but I can tell you personally, it'll stand in the way of relationships for sure, but you get life sentence for it. I mean, it's surreal, right? It's so over the top. It's impossible to even consider. So you're working on that, right?
I'm going to do my best to work with our lawmakers and pressure them. I have a lot of backing through the Last Prisoner Project, through all the people that support them and all that, to do that mission, to be able to spend time in DC, to be able to spend time in the lawmakers' offices and all that, and to try to bring more media attention to why are we doing this to so many people? Why are we doing this? And it's more than just doing it to this convict, and this convict. As you talked about with my son, it was my family. This affected my ex-wife, both of my children, my parents, it affects everybody. So we really need to make this change. We need to make our especially our drug laws right off. We need to make them so that they fit the crime. And I think that if there's enough attention brought to this, if we can make people listen, we can get it changed. And that's my goal. And I'm going to work very diligently on it.
Fortunate in that, Craig, for sure.
I mean, all I can say, you know, in the work that we do at 70 Million Jobs in Commissary Club, and from our own personal experience, Seth and Divine and the rest of our team have had the great good fortune, the honor of meeting so many people who are fucking heroic, who have the biggest hearts, who have just a belief in the goodness of their fellow man, who believe in this country, who believe in second chances, you know, who have families, and all they pray to do is to take care of them and put food on the table and stay out of trouble and be a good father and be a good mother and be a good friend and brother and sister if they're only given that chance. And, you know, if listening to you two guys, you know, I know some of the people who are part of our audience are already is preaching to the choir, because their life is similarly devoted to making change and bringing justice to a very unjust system. But if anyone needed any reason or motivation, you know, at all, Craig and Seth, you know, to get behind this stuff, you know, you guys provide it in spades. So I really want to thank you both enormously. And you guys are just amazing. I mean, you're my heroes, really. And you're just totally amazing. And Craig, I'm so excited for you and what lies ahead, you know, and, you know, I hope there's healing that comes your way, because you really deserve it. You know, and we all have, again, it's National Hug Day, apparently. Big hug to you. And to you too, Seth. And to you too, Seth, and Divine as well.
For everybody.
Seth, Richard,
Everybody.
and Craig. Hugs out.
Hugs out. So what I would just like just to leave a couple of thoughts here. Number one, people have asked us, you know, can we see past episodes, or we can't make it tonight or whatever for the Yard? If you go to YouTube and look up the Yard or Commissary Club, you can find past episodes. So that's available there. We will also leave this Zoom room, or whatever the hell it's called, open after we leave and end in a couple of minutes. And if there are folks here who want to hang out and talk to one another and share, do it till 3 a.m. if you'd like, as long as you'd like. You know, our goal is just to bring people together so they can connect and communicate. That's what we're trying to do with Commissary Club. You know, our feeling, I shouldn't say my team and I's feeling, and many other people recognize that there is so little connection that exists among people with records. There's a connection gap, if you will. We're not available to each other, to help each other out, to hook each other up, to provide role models or inspiration even. And yet there are incredible people who could provide all of that and help one another. In my feeling, women went through the women's movement and they developed this concept of sisterhood. And I don't know what the word is yet, but there's got to be the equivalent among the folks who have records. We should be looking after each other. We should be coming together so that we can speak with one voice. We could elect any president we want. There's 70 million of us. 1 in 3 adults have a record. And yet we don't come together. We may not have a lot of money individually, but collectively, we have enormous buying power. And yet no marketer, no business, no brand really pays attention to us other than those that seek to rip us off and treat us with predatory practices. This shit's got to end. Like it's got to end lifetime sentences for marijuana. or other nonviolent charges. That's got to end. And if we are together on this, I think we have an opportunity to make some change in our lifetimes. So I invite people, if you need a job or you know people with records need a job, go to 70 million jobs. Things got tough after the coronavirus. The market is still not back, but we're helping people. And come to Commissary Club and just hang out with each other. Hang out with us. Hang out with Craig and Seth and Divine and many, many others, because we'd love to have you there. So unless anybody has anything else to say, I'm going to shut up. Seth Sundberg, Divine, would you like to say a closing word?
Seth and Craig, thanks so much for being here, for being you, for going through what you've gone through, sharing your whole soul and blood, sweat, and tears on the yard with us tonight too. And Craig, congrats on your freedom. It's more power to you. We support you in everything you guys are gonna do from here on out for sure too. So thank you all for tonight.
Divine,
Thank you.
any closing? You want to say goodnight? Oh, he's having a problem with his audio. All right. I know the Divine would be saying.
I'm back. Oh, I'm here.
Oh, here you go.
I'm here. Yo, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Seth. As always, my comrade, my brother. You know what I mean? Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your insight, your real answers to the questions. It was great having you guys, and look forward to linking with you guys in the future. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my heart goes out to both of you guys. We consider you like really dear friends, and we so appreciate everything about you guys. And Craig, when we can travel again, we're gonna have a Craig's Day for you in LA.
Yes, I'll be there, Craig.
Can I get on the Harley?
I'm not so sure about the Harley. You got a Harley now, so you don't need another Harley. But I can lend you my Acura if that'll help. So in any event, thank you all for joining us. We'll be back here next week, same bad time, same bad channel. And if you want to hang out here, please do. If you need to get in touch with anybody, Divine, you have one last thing?
Yeah, I'm gonna hang around. I'll hang around.
Yeah, okay, cool. Divine,
I'm gonna make this move though. So rec moves in a couple minutes.
Rec moves on deck.
Yeah, right.
Make sure you make the move. All right, y'all.
Yeah.
All right, peace, Seth.
All right, everybody, stay safe, stay out of trouble, don't go to prison. It ain't worth it.
Never.
And we love you all. Thanks for coming. Good night.
Peace.
Recall.
Recall.
Recall.